Welcome to the Pastured Pig Podcast, where we share the successes and challenges of raising pigs on pasture. We talk to producers all over the country, from small homesteads to large commercial pasture operations. Whether you're new to pastured pigs or have been raising hogs for decades, we hope you hear new ideas and new perspectives on pasturing hogs. Here's your host, Troy McClung.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Pastured Pig Podcast. I'm your host, Troy McClung, as Kelly announced in the intro there. And I think I'm getting into the groove here, getting some interviews nailed down and kind of getting back into getting things scheduled. I'm not going to promise a podcast every week simply because we're getting into the holiday season and things get crazy around here. But that's what I'm shooting for. I may take a break around Christmas time, maybe a Thanksgiving break. We'll see. But I've got a lot of you all have really stepped up and sent me some info to get you on here to interview. I think I've got maybe 10 interviews lined up here in the next 4 weeks. So very excited. So there should be plenty of material coming as long as I don't mess it up. And still making little tweaks to my audio, trying little pieces of equipment here and there. Again, I'm have to use basically 1980s technology to get all this done. So appreciate y'all bearing with me. We're trying to tweak it as we go along. Feel free to give me some feedback about anything, including feedback that you're hearing on your side, and I'll see what I can do to pick it out. I try to do my playbacks and listen to make sure there isn't any issues there. Updates here on the farm real quick. Nothing crazy coming up on weaning. Probably in the next 2 weeks we'll be weaning our piglets, and we wean by moving them into a small paddock that will also be our training paddock. So we train them to electric fence. At the same time, we'll be weaning them off. So we'll detail how that goes. There'll definitely be some videos on the YouTube channel, but we'll probably talk about that here on the podcast as well when that comes. Well, as far as interviews, I have with me a gentleman by the name of Rodney Adams with Revival Farmstead. He's down in Dallas, Texas, and had a really good conversation with him, and we're going to go ahead and jump right into that now. So, Rodney, I appreciate you coming on the podcast. Tell us where your farm is.
We're about 40 minutes east of downtown Dallas, here in Royce City.
Yeah, a lot of pig farmers down in your neck of the woods?
No.
Yeah,
no, not many at all.
Yeah, that's beef country, yeah.
Handful around here in Texas, but really this is not pig country. This is cattle country.
All right. So let's talk briefly about your setup. So you're in Texas, obviously, so you've got Texas weather to deal with, but talk about your setup from like a 40,000-foot elevation view.
Yeah, sure. We're on 5 acres, and there's a lot of acreage sort of around us and our neighboring properties, but we ourselves have 5 acres. We moved out here about a year and a half ago just to sort of get a little peace and quiet. We started, had a few cooney hogs, and that sort of, developed into what we're doing now. Currently, we're fairly small. We run 6 purebred Berkshire sows, and we sell primarily. Our goal is to sell meat directly to our customers, but we also we sell feeder pigs, and we sell breed stock and sort of everything in between. So we're growing, but we're things are moving pretty quickly.
Yeah.
We have on our 5 acres. We use currently about 1.5 acres of that. Currently, where the hogs are, we'll be growing into the rest of it, but we sort of do a hybrid deep mulch system with a little bit of pasture that our hogs can get out on. We just sort of felt like that would give us the opportunity to have, the most hogs on a small piece of property that we can get.
Yeah. Okay. Wow. There's a lot to unpack there. So let's back up a little bit. So, how did you come about? You mentioned you're trying to get out and kind of get away a little bit, but why did you start with hogs? What led you? Did you have experience with hogs? Have you did you grow up raising hogs?
Yeah, believe it or not, I did. This is our first farm as a family, my wife and our kids and I. When I got out of the military, we were living overseas. We moved to Dallas. I took a fancy Wall Street job. Did that for about 3.5 years. Now I'm the executive director of our church, and so we decided that we needed a new hobby and needed a little bit more space and peace and quiet for the kids, and so we moved out. And we got hogs because it was familiar to me. We started with chickens, like a lot of folks do, layers, and we ran a couple of broilers. We had 16 broilers that we ran there for a little bit. But my grandparents were one of the largest hog producers in Texas back in the kind of 50s through the 80s or 90s, and so I grew up familiar with it. My mom and dad, we had hogs when I was growing up. We showed. Dad had a little breeding operation for a little bit, and so getting over the nerves of having hogs and how do you put them in pens and what do you do with them once they're in there was not really a factor for us, and so we just kind of jumped in.
Yeah. Yes, that's interesting. So your family having the largest hog operation in Texas at some point. Now, I assume that was that confinement based? Was that pasture based?
Yeah, I assume it's the largest, if not one of the largest. It was a confinement based system where Papa ran. I think he had around 300 or 400 sows that he was running there in typical sort of confinement situation where he's got different farrowing houses, and then they'd move to kind of their finishing floors once the hogs were of age, and then trucks would come in and grab them and take them wherever they took them. I know he had relationships with a lot of the large packers, kind of your name brand meat producers, and he did that for as long as I can remember. And so I grew up sort of with my mind tweaked towards the commercial environment. So even today, as we're trying to get away from some of that or change things maybe a little bit, some of those memories are still there, and some of those strategies, if you will, are still there, and so we're having to balance that a little bit.
Sure, absolutely. So you mentioned 6 sows, and it sounds like right now 6 breeding sows, and it sounds like right now you're active on a little over an acre with those. So I assume you're farrowing on farm. Are you doing AI or boar, or what's your situation there?
We're currently AIing. We kept a boar of ours that was born over the summer, and then we're going to hold on to him. And we've got a litter due in December from a different bloodline. We're going to pull a boar out of there if we find one that we like. And my goal is to have our own boars. The AI thing is it's helped us kind of really be specific about our genetics, and we're really investing in good meat quality boars, meat quality animals in the registered Berkshire sort of line. But as far as timing heat cycles and getting semen here on time and at the right temperature. This last round we had some sows in heat 2 weeks ago, or about a week and a half ago, where we had gotten the semen here and we were ready to go, and we've got a little wine fridge that we bought off of Craigslist where we keep it at temperature, and then the sows didn't go into standing heat. They they were in estrus for a little bit, and then it just kind of passed. And
yeah.
So for that's a few $100, that down the tube that kind of hurts the pocketbook a little bit when you do it that way. So we're looking forward to having our own boars.
Yeah, I can speak from that experience. We did AI for the longest time, and just this year is the first year with boars, and yeah, it's a challenge on both sides, but there's pros and cons. But yeah, it is a drag when you've lost that entire dose simply because things didn't work out calendar wise.
Yeah.
All right. Well, so let's talk about the Berkshire first. So why you talked about starting with the Cooney. So why a switch to the Berkshire?
Well, our plan was to move out here and just sort of homestead a little bit, so we weren't really concerned about how slow coonies can be to get up to processing weight. We have some decent pasture out here even on our little 5 acres, and so the appeal of the coonies was that they're docile, and I'm a bivocational farmer, I guess you could say. I work for a church full time and do this, so the fewer fences that I have to fix and hogs that I have to get back in their pens, the better. But as soon as we got hogs on our property, friends and family immediately had sort of said, well, we want in. How do we get the meat? And so we processed one. We started immediately looking for, a hog that would maybe get to processing weight a little faster than the coonies, so that we could meet some demand. We had not really intended on having an actual meat business, but that's sort of where we're headed now. And so I'd known about the Berkshire for a while, just through growing up and doing a little bit more research. We like the meat quality that they put out. We like the marketability of the name, and so the fact that we could get sort of a more domestic style or breed of hog that is high quality meat, that has some marketability behind it. That's sort of what had us go with the Berkshire, and we ended up selling our coonies to our processor. We took a hog in, and he had asked if we knew of anybody else that had any coonies to sell, and I sold them ours on the spot so that we could make some room for our Berkshires.
All right. That worked out well then.
Yeah.
All right. So, how many, with the 6 sows, and of course, I assume, are you breeding all 6 of those each year, and how many litters are you getting? Litter sizes, I should say.
Well, we're hoping to get at least 3 of the 6, 2 litters out of them next year. We don't want to do more than 2, and frankly, even if it was mathematically possible, it would be hard just with other factors and getting animals bred and stuff. But we've got 3 that are due in December, and then 3 more that are due shortly thereafter.
Wow.
And so, we should be able to get, 2 litters out of at least half of them next calendar year. So we're hoping to run, between, 60 and 80 hogs next year.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question. So looking to finish 60 or 80 hogs on the pasture size that you have. That's a pretty good density there.
Yeah.
So let's.
It is.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Sorry.
No, I was going to say. So let's segue over into your hybrid setup that you talked about here at the intro. What exactly are you calling your hybrid setup with pasture and deep litter? Can you describe that to our listeners?
Sure. So our hogs spend a good, I guess you could say, particularly the sows, they would spend the majority of the year on a deep litter or a deep mulch sort of setup. We've read a lot of the stuff everybody else has, and reading about Joel Salatin and his sort of deep litter system, how he runs his hogs over the winter. We just sort of got to thinking, well, we don't really need to run hogs inside shelter like that, but we don't have a lot of space, so if it's good enough for him, it should be good enough for us. And so we do have some cedar trees and some kind of really like nuisance type, trees on our property. A lot of folks around here try to get rid of them, but it's perfect for shade for hogs. And so we actually, our system's a completely outdoor system. Each full-grown sow or hog would get anywhere between, let's just say, 100 and 150 square feet per hog. That's sort of how I figure the pens out. And then we keep, it wouldn't be as deep of a litter as Joel Salatin, I think, runs, but we keep between, call it 8 and 15 inches in the pens at all times. And that enables us to really, we sort of scoop the top of the waste off, when hogs, if you got a square pen and you've got shelter in one corner and water in one and feed in the other, they're going to waste in the other. And so it enables us to keep that a little bit controlled, and we can turn that, we can add wood chips on top of it, and it really keeps the the smell down. It keeps the flies down, which we believe will help keep parasites and different things down, and really enables us to kind of add more animals on a 5-acre piece of property without kind of going full confinement.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of what we're doing right now. And then they get out on pasture every now and then.
Yeah. So if I'm understanding, so you talk about 150 square foot paddock per breeding sow, I assume. So when she farrows and you've got that litter, how do you break up that litter after weaning to finish those out? Are those individually in their own paddocks, or are there larger paddocks that you keep that entire group together? How do you manage that?
Yeah, I guess what I mean is if we've got a group of hogs, whether we're finishing them out or if they're just, sows that aren't ready to farrow yet, we just kind of calculate that 100 to 150 square feet per animal is kind of what we want to give them.
Gotcha.
So we might have a 1,000 square foot pen that's got 6 or 8 hogs in it, but when they get ready to farrow, we run them down into a smaller pen, and it's typically a 16 by either 16 by 16 or 16 by 24, whatever works out neatly, with the panels. They've got a shelter in there, no crates, so they kind of semi-open farrow, and then they live in there in that deep litter bed, with their litter of pigs for 6 to 8 weeks. That's when we sort of try to wean, and then as the pigs start to eat on their own and start trying to eat some of her feed, we might let them out. We might let them creep a little bit out onto some pasture and start getting their legs under them, and then once they're done and ready to wean, then we'll move her out and keep them in there for a little bit on their own. It's easier. We just found it's easier to move her out than it is to move them out.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah. Very good. Okay, so I understand the setup a little better there. Now, you'd mentioned Joel Salatin's method, and I've been on his farm several times now and witnessed firsthand how he does that operation. In fact, I've been there, I think, both times in the spring and early summer to see his barns. And again, I won't get into the details for listeners that maybe aren't familiar with his process, but the deep litter method, he does a process before he brings his cattle in. The cattle are actually what are producing a lot of that litter with the wood chips, and he pre-seeds in the fall. He'll pre-seed his large barn area, this holding area, with corn, puts his wood chips in, and of course the cattle stay in there all winter long, so he doesn't sacrifice any pasture. And their fecal material, the hay and the wood chips, they just keep building up. So it gets to the point in the spring where he's 3 to 4 feet deep in some places, and or in most places. And then when he puts the pigs on there, they go through and they're looking for that fermented corn underneath, and they just turn and turn and turn. So are you doing any preloading like that, or are you just using your wood chips, as he likes to call a carbaceous diaper, to capture that waste?
Yeah, ours is more the diaper thing. It helps us manage the waste a little bit. Because we don't have any other animals in there, and the hog life cycle is so short. That by the time they're at 2 months, weaning age, they only have 4 months left, and so they don't really spend a whole lot of time in that one space, and we have extra paddocks that we rotate them through.
Yeah. Okay.
So by the time it gets, let's call it 2 feet deep, they're usually ready to move on to somewhere else, or we've sold them, or they're ready to go to process, and I'll just remove the panels, and we'll go in and clean all that out, move it to our compost pile, and we'll start over. So that's sort of what we do.
Yeah, well, that's what I was getting ready to say. Obviously, you are producing a byproduct there, which, in a full open pastured system, that gets dispersed quite a bit, and usually you don't have to handle it. So you're adding additional labor, but obviously you're getting more product per acre in that situation. So you mentioned compost pile. So what is the end game strategy for that compost pile? Obviously, that's going to reach a certain size, and you're going to have to do something with it then again.
Yeah, I'm not sure. What we're thinking is, this next year will be the first year that we have a sizable compost pile. What we've been doing is when we muck out the pens, we run currently we have about 200 layers, and then we've run about 100 broilers at a time. And so with a wheelbarrow, we'll just run the compost or the mulch, the waste and the mulch over to them, and they completely rifle through it and get everything they want out of it and spread it out, and we don't have to worry about it again. But
yeah,
as we grow, we just bought a tractor. I've been doing all this with a wheelbarrow and a pitchfork. We just bought a tractor, and I think we're about to buy a little compact no-till seeder, seed drill. And I think what we're going to try to do is we're going to get the compost tested. We're going to take a sample and send it off and just kind of see what's in it, and if it's we'll be ready to put out on pasture. Then we're going to try to spread it out and then plant. Try to run some cover crop and some different things. Turnips, radishes, pumpkins, cucumbers, squashes, whatever's in season. And when we let our hogs out on pasture for that short period of time, they've got some pretty substantial forage out there.
Yeah, I like that idea, and that's kind of what was rolling around in my head as you were talking. Again, thinking of what Salatin does when they go to clean out their barns after the pigs are ready to go out to pasture. Then that's primarily where all that goes. It goes into the manure spreaders, and then they take it and seed their cattle pastures and their chicken pastures. All those are pretty same pasture type. So really reinvesting that back into the soil to build that quality of pasture even more. So yeah, I like that idea. And then of course, as you mentioned, having it tested to see how that's going to work out. And then my goodness, I assume you could possibly even have some byproduct sale opportunity there. If you get a good compost that's trustworthy and been tested well, then you may be able to have a value added item to sell there to other people. Yeah, I like that. All right. So as far as and one more point on that. So as far as your deep litter acquisition, you talked about a lot of a scrub tree around that area of Texas, or an unwanted tree. Are you bringing in those and shipping them up? Are you just acquiring wood chips wherever you can? Do you have a reliable source for that?
We have a pretty good relationship with a tree trimming company in Dallas, and they bring us all we want, at least for now. It costs them quite a bit of money to take all that material to the city landfill, and so making the extra trip out to our place and dumping it for free seems to work out for them. They seem to be happy to do it, and for now, we get load after load after load. In fact, one just came 5 minutes before you and I got on the phone.
Yeah.
And so that's been really handy, and and it's nice because around here there's a lot of oak, a lot of pecan, stuff like that, particularly in the city. And so when we get those loads and I can dump them in the pens, the hogs like to kind of sift through there and pick out nuts and different things. So it gives them something to do and a little bit of I don't know what exactly it adds to their diet, but they seem to like it. So it seems to work.
Yeah. Well, so let's talk about a little bit about infrastructure. Sounds like you said most of it's an outdoor setup. Your farrowing paddocks have the lean-to farrowing areas there. But what are you doing as far as, is there any other shelter do you have? Obviously, Texas gets pretty hot. I've only been to Houston once in my life. That's the only time I've been in Texas, and I think I was in Houston in August, and I wasn't very impressed. It was a little too warm for my northern blood there. But so, what are you doing for shade, for wallow, for water? What are you doing to keep the pigs cool?
Yeah, so we have these cedar trees. They're actually called ash junipers, but they're like the western red cedar. They're kind of a bushy, really dense, evergreen, almost like a shrub tree. They grow to be about 20 or 30 feet tall. That's about it. They're really dense. But what I'd like to do is I'll get a chainsaw and trim them up from the bottom, almost like a Christmas tree, and those will provide all day shade, for the hogs and for the chickens. And so we pin them in around those. We build all of our pens around at least, a couple of those cedar trees so that they've got all day shade, provides, it breaks up the wind. Normally when our rain comes, it comes with wind as well, and so it breaks up, breaks up some of that weather, and I usually don't have to do more than just put a little lean-to or something in their pen. We don't really give them a ton of shelter. Right now it's a little complicated because most of my herd has come from a commercial environment, and so they are learning to have to kind of forage and kind of make it out there, but that's our goal, is to breed that into our herd over time, to where there's just fewer inputs required from us. If it gets really hot during the summer, we'll run misters kind of up in the trees just to give them a little bit of extra moisture. For the good thing about Texas, I don't know if, as a pig farmer, I think it's a good thing. Not everybody does, but the breeze or the wind is almost always blowing here, and so with just a little bit of moisture from those misters, the breeze keeps them pretty cool, and we don't really have to worry about it too much. We run water nipples. I've got poly tubing that I run everywhere, and so between the misters, the shade, and them spilling, the waste from the water nipples,
right,
there's usually a wallow, kind of around, and that seems to work.
Yeah, there's no shortage of a pig being able to find water, that's for sure. If it's anywhere on the property, they will find it. Yeah, excellent. Okay, so additional infrastructure. So with your hybrid setup, are you incorporating electric fence? Are you using solid wall? Are you using woven, a combination? How are you fencing them in?
Yeah, the deep litter is in hard panels, just kind of your standard, hog panel that you can get anywhere. And we were going to do electric, but really quickly figured out that the hogs just push so much material on top of that electric fence that we really needed a way to a more firm way to keep that material in. And so the deep mulch pins are paneled in, but when we want to let them out, we'll just move the end wall or the end panel, tie electric fence into it, or just sort of put a post, on the end and run electric fence out however far we want onto whatever, paddock we want to put them on. And that seems to work pretty well. Once we get them trained to the fence itself, and we just let them out, and it doesn't seem to, we don't really have any issues really.
Yeah. That's excellent. Very good.
Yeah.
So in your setup, you'd mentioned a little bit earlier about keeping the flies down and how that relates to parasite load. What's your biggest concern or biggest thing you're looking out for when it comes to parasite issues with your pasture setup?
Well, smell and flies are an indicator for us. So if we walk out and there's a pretty heavy presence of flies, or you can smell the hogs before you get right up to the pen, then we know that we need to do some work on the litter. Typically, particularly with fresh litter, we're 30 minutes from Dallas. A lot of our friend groups and our church groups and whatnot, they're all from Dallas, and so nobody in our social circle has ever been around live, domestic pigs ever. And so when they come out and look and kind of spend some time out here, it almost hits them when you have to remind them that they don't smell anything right now. And then they're like, oh yeah, that's right, I don't smell anything. And so what ideal is there's no smell, there's no flies, and you're right next to a load of hogs, and it smells like you're just outside. And so that's that's how we know if we're managing the pen correctly. We've noticed that after about 4 months or so, it's really harder and harder to keep that smell down. The litter has just gotten built up, to the point where, and by then we've for sure gotten a couple of heavy weeks of rain. We've here in the kind of North Texas area, we get about 42 inches of rain a year, but 70% of it comes, twice.
Yeah, 2 weeks.
we get it typically, early summer, late spring, and then one about in October, early November, was where we get most of our rain, and so that presents, a challenge certainly for the deep mulch system, but it's better than just dirt. The mulch really helps us manage that heavy water, to some degree, but we've got some that have been on their paddock for, I guess, about 2 months, I think. So probably here in about a month or so, we'll be moving them. We'll rotate them to a different paddock.
Yeah. So it's one of those things you're just kind of watching, evaluating the build up, the weather, all that's going to play into when you move and how you move.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Do you currently have any type of vaccination regimen right now on this? Are you prepared for that, or do you feel that's going to be necessary?
Well, we don't worm and we don't vaccinate for anything. I understand that's a risk, but our goal is to really keep that out of our hogs as much as possible. Now, if we have a hog that's sick or needs treatment, then we'll pull her out of the herd and we'll try to treat her and then maybe do something different with her. But the truth is, there's a company, I can't remember where they're located, but we get kind of an herbal mix from them, both for parasite treatment and also for immune system, and they've got some other kind of mixes. And we treat our hogs with that. They get apple cider vinegar. They get fresh food. They get fresh litter all the time. And they're always out in the fresh open air. We don't crowd them. They really never get less than 100 square feet per animal. And so, our bet is that doing it that way, plus letting them out on pasture periodically, will enable us to do as little vaccinating as possible.
Yeah. Okay. Very good. So you mentioned there about some supplements and things. So let's move over to your feed. So what's your feed strategy with your operation?
Yeah, we do we get a mix from a feed mill that we put together using the Fertrell company sort of recommended rations, and we started out actually as it was a corn oat roasted soybean mix with the Fertrell mineral supplements in there, and our feed mill that we were using at the time, their roasted soy supplier was bought by one of the suburb cities up here. It was located in one of these suburbs that used to be in the country and isn't anymore, and the city bought that land, and so they lost their soybean roaster. And so we just can't get roasted soybeans apparently for a while. And so we moved away from the corn oat soy mix to a Milo peanut mix that's got some other things in it, some cottonseed and some different things. Same protein levels, same mineral supplements, just a different grain profile. And the hogs have seemed to have done pretty well on it. They like it. They're putting on weight or keeping weight. I can tell that when we move the feed up and down, it does what we want it to do with some of the sows, and so we're happy so far. And then we have about a 2,500 square foot garden space that will pull cucumbers, zucchinis, squashes, whatever out of there, and so the hogs get a lot of that over the summer, and then this winter they'll get. We've got some finishers that'll finish out on a lot of pumpkins and winter gourds and things like that. So we're just trying it. We don't think that will completely take the place of their feed mix, but it gives them a little bit of extra, and so we kind of bring some fresh food and fresh pasture to them instead of them having to be out on it sometimes.
Yeah. No, I like that variety, and I think that's good to have that into your strategy to really mix that up from time to time. Good stuff. All right. So Rodney, let's talk about your obviously the tail end of the process here, and that is your retail sales. You had mentioned that right now you're doing, I assume you're doing custom processing, doing wholes and halves. Are you doing USDA cuts? How are you taking care of that right now?
We're just now about to start with a state inspected processor. The USDA. The USDA processor out here that's close to us, at least within a couple hours. I mean, they aren't even taking calls for hogs right now, and being cattle country, our processors, there's a handful that are around, there, but just like everyone else, we're scheduling into August of 2021 for hogs that aren't even born yet,
right?
And won't be born for another month. And so, that obviously is a challenge, just like it is for everyone else. But additional challenge around here is that this is cattle country, and so a lot of the processors have even shut down they'll shut down some of their hog dates and open up more dates for cattle. So,
sure.
Where they might have done hogs every Friday, now they're doing them every, third Friday of the month or something like that.
Right.
So, we've just got to really be out in front of it. So we've got good custom processors close by, so doing wholes and halves with them is not difficult. But moving into cuts is a little bit more tricky. But we're going to do that next year. We've got about to open up our online shop that we're going through barn to door on that, and we're currently in the getting all of our pricing and all of our stuff loaded in, and we're going to open that up here in the next few weeks in preparation for some litters that are going to be hitting the ground starting in the winter and early spring. And so we'll do direct to the consumer there with not only wholes, halves, but different cuts. We have eggs, we have pastured poultry, so we do whole chickens as well. And we're looking forward to getting that up and running. We'll have a little delivery service. We're not going to do any shipping, but on farm pickup, set drop points, a couple days a week, and then delivery for a small delivery fee.
Yeah, that's excellent. And it sounds like your customer base is already established to some degree with your friends and like you said, people from church and the neighbors in that area. So that's always a great place to get started, to have that customer base established. So do you think as far as that goes, getting deposits, getting that type of interest, have you seen already that you feel like you've got a pretty good handle on this year's production?
I think so. We've so far, even what little we've produced, we've sold out of everything, fairly quickly. And we do have folks that are excited for us to get more stuff online. We haven't even really touched, even our local area. There's some a handful of suburb type cities that are around us that we haven't even really spent a lot of time in, because our friend network is in sales network has been in Dallas. We were set to be in a farmer's market this fall that ended up closing, just postponing until next year because of COVID stuff. So we kind of missed out on some of that relationship building there. But we've got a couple of grocery stores that we're talking to, kind of your mom and pop, small natural food grocer, type situations that are connected to a couple of other restaurants kind of on the west side of the Metroplex. So we've got some good traction in town. We just ultimately need to get our processing nailed down and get our dates kind of lined up for next year.
Yeah, very good. Very good. Well, all right. Well, Rodney, as far as looking ahead, like a 5-year plan, where do you see the operation in 5 years? Where would you like to see it?
Yeah, that's a great question. Not really sure. We're kind of taking it one month or 1 year at a time. We will run out of space here. There is a limit to what we can do on 5 acres, and we do enjoy having the chickens, and we're kind of in some early stages with some beef producers around here that maybe there might be something we can do to add some grass-fed beef to our retail offering. I think in 5 years I'd like for our retail brand to be known enough that we can confidently sell out every year and offer a variety of things to where there's something for everybody. I think it's pretty easy to sell bacon. It's not quite as easy to sell some of the other cuts, and
right.
We'd like to help educate the marketplace on that, and raise the awareness that there's a farm producing good food, within 30 minutes of the city out here. So we'd be happy if we could get those things done.
Yeah, definitely. So Yeah, and it sounds like obviously having all this pasture land around you, that there could even be an opportunity for you to lease or work out something with some other landowners there if you got bigger and bigger. Very good.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, there's, around here where we live, pretty much everybody has 8 or 10 acres. My neighbor has, 100 acres across the road, and so there's definitely some acreage around. I think what's interesting on the lease front is in Texas, it's in maybe a lot of states. There's some, you get a kind of a property tax exemption for engaging in agricultural activity. It's actually a valuation sort of deduction, I guess you could say. And there are, believe it or not, a lot of folks around here who don't have that. And the savings, the tax savings in Texas is significant. And so I think there's an opportunity for us to enter into some, $1 a month lease agreements, in exchange for helping folks earn their tax exemption.
Exactly.
For the next, over, a 5-year period. So I think that's definitely something we're looking into and could be interesting.
Yeah, I like that. I mean, that can really ramp up a plan if of course the demand is there to have those options in play and not have to drive an hour away to access a different operation area that you've got set up. That'd be great.
Yeah.
Well, in one question I always like to ask everybody, Rodney, in closing is, what is your best experience or your favorite part about raising pigs on pasture?
I just think that I've really enjoyed just having them outside. Like I said, growing up in a more commercial environment, this is somewhat new to me, the way that we're doing it, and I really just enjoy, seeing the hogs out there, being happy in the sunshine, eating stuff that's growing or nosing around in stuff that's growing, and they're not trying to bust out of their pens, they're not tearing up their feed troughs, they're not tearing up their water, because they're not agitated with each other, they've got plenty of space and they're just kind of being a pig out there. I've really enjoyed that. And I like farrowing day. I enjoy when the litter's born and seeing what you got, how many males, how many females, how many alive, it's just there's nothing like the day the litters come.
Yeah, absolutely. Very good. Well, Rodney, if anybody wanted to find out more about your operation, do you have any online presence you'd share with us?
Yeah, you could. They can go to revivalfarmstead.com. We've got a little landing page there where you can kind of check in on, see updates, and sign up for our newsletter. We'll send out information about kind of what we have available and when our new online shop is going to be up and running. We're also on Facebook. We're on Instagram, so you can find us on there, Revival Farmstead, on either one of those, and connect with us. We'd love that.
Wonderful. All right. Well, I appreciate you taking the time today to talk with me. It was good to hear about your operation, and I pray you have a great week out on the pasture.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me on, Troy. Appreciate it.
All right, take care. I appreciate Rodney taking the time to come on and share his experiences with us. I have to say, after our interview, I talked to him for a little bit. I'm definitely jealous of that Texas flat land. I'm not jealous of the heat, but I'm jealous of the flat land. He said there's absolutely no angle at all in his land, which just blows my mind. I have to say, I think I would be a little afraid of that. I'm the opposite of claustrophobic, so being out on that flat of ground with that much sky, I don't know, it spooks me a little bit. It gives me cold chills to think about it. I like being tucked in my valleys. I like having minimal sky. I know, it's a weird West Virginia thing, I promise. Well, all right. If you've got any suggestions, any interviews, any topics, by all means, drop me a line. You can go to redtoolhouse.com, click on the Pastured Podcast. Oh, my goodness. Click on the Pastured Pig Podcast link. Dummy with so much alliteration thought he was being clever there. Click on that link. There's a contact form there you can fill out and send me some information. I'm really excited about some of the interviews we've got lined up. I hate to to mention them in case I jinx some things, but I think we've got Carl Blake coming back. He's almost like our news report, what's going on in the pastured pig world. So we're going to have him back on to be talking about some things, and then I've got actually a pig veterinarian lined up that we're going to talk to. So excited to have her on as well. Now, hopefully I didn't just crash both of those by mentioning it, but stay tuned for those. We'll have those posted, hopefully coming out in the next several months as we get them all lined up. Well, I pray everyone have a great week and enjoy the time out in your pasture. Take care.
We hope you have enjoyed this episode of the Pastured Pig Podcast. To learn more about our podcast or to submit topics or recommend guests for future episodes, visit redtoolhouse.com.